where she is entertaining other people in the bedroom. He enjoyed having the freak-offs.
She's being asked specifically about the drug use.
I think the defense naturally is trying to poke holes sort of in some of the earlier testimony that Sean Combs was always the person in control and that Cassie Ventura was forced into these situations. So the defense all day have really been laying out a lot of text messages and a lot of emails that tell the story of a very complicated relationship from the very beginning. In fact, in 2007, they showed the jurors an email where Ventura basically says after 2 months of having a kiss with Combs and saying that's when their relation started after her 21st birthday, after their relation started 2 months later, jurors saw an email where she basically says, I love you, I'm so excited to be a part of this relationship with you, how she had plans of a future with him. So they're laying out somebody that was excited about the idea of being with Sean Combs at 21 years old and her future plans, but also a little bit of jealousy. In that same email, she makes reference to wondering if maybe Combs should have went after her friend, Carrie, and then said maybe you should have went with Carrie because she could help you or, you know, do the things that you want her to do or something to that effect. But she also said, which I thought was really interesting in that email, Rachel, is I want to be the woman that you want me to be. Like almost this idea of teach me what it is I need to be to keep you happy. And that was 2 months into the relationship.
About how she had to go to rehab. And one really important note as we ended yesterday, Nicole, was this really sad moment that she talked about how even after she left Sean Combs, even after their relationship ended, and she was with her husband and had 2 babies, she's on her 3rd right now, 9 months pregnant, she said that she felt suicidal thinking about the life that she had with Sean Combs, and even asked her husband at one point saying, you've got this, right? If something were to happen to me, you would be able to take care of these children. And said she tried to and wanted to walk out into traffic and that her husband had to stop her. That is the long-standing PST that she has had from this relationship.
Her voice is low at times. The defense did tell her if it's too much, I can read them, but there were many times early on this morning where she read some of those explicit details where she is clearly excited about a freak off and talks about entertaining other people in the bedroom.
And what has Diddy's demeanor been in this cross-examination as well?
There was a moment where Sean Combs was nodding in agreement when they brought up a message that he sent her where he said, you know, one of my favorite times of the freak-offs is when we're able to make love after. And then she responds, that's the same for me. Now, what's interesting here is that that does match what she told prosecutors or what she's been telling the jury all along, which is she did this and she said, but she really wanted to spend time with him after the fact. So he was shaking his head at this message where he's almost, I guess, agreeing that he did say, without him saying it, he enjoyed having the freak-offs and then having sex with her after the fact. And her saying, I agree with you. I love having sex with you after, too.
Cassie Ventura today looking a little more subdued. She's got her hair pulled back. She's wearing a blazer. And she's being asked right now by the defense. This is the first day of cross-examination. She's being asked specifically about the drug use in the relationship that she had for all those years with Sean Combs. What drugs they took, how much they took, what they felt like when they were on them, what they felt like when they were coming off of them, what the mood was like. Anna Estevado is conducting the cross-examination for Sean Combs' defense. And we did get this clue from the opening statements that the defense really does want to paint her.
You know, they have their notebooks in their hand. They're coming in. They're very alert. And I think this is one of those testimonies where you have no choice but to pay attention and almost be flabbergasted, obviously, at some of what you're hearing, because it's not only just insight into somebody's sex life, but the details are disturbing at times, especially during that prosecution testimony when we saw some of the alleged abuse or we saw pictures of her after a beating of some kind, according to her. But the jurors are definitely paying attention. I don't see anyone that's not keeping their focus on Cassie Ventura, and also I noticed them taking notes a lot of times.
And the children, as they were exiting court yesterday, 2 of the girls were seen crying. How emotional have they been in court?
Again, I cannot imagine if that was my father or somebody close to me up there and having to hear details of their sex life. Those are young women. They lost their mother, one of them, the twins. So no one can probably quite understand what it is that they're going through, but I think that's something that you think about on both sides, you know, to look at Alex Fine, which is Cassie Ventura's husband, and think about him having to listen to all that's being said about the type of woman that Cassie Ventura was versus the person that's expecting, you know, their third child together now. So whether it's Combs's family or Ventura's family that's there to support her, her brother and her husband, Alex Fine, I think it's difficult on both sides. Seeing him taking notes from the beginning, I see him put his glasses on. He gets very close to the screen when they're reading some of those text messages, so he's paying attention.
Now, Ventura confirmed that she and Combs had conversations about a swingers lifestyle, but that the freak-offs, they were very different.
Yeah, so she talked about this idea where I guess Combs wanted her to watch him have sex with another woman. She said that happened 2 or 3 times, but that he mentioned it frequently.
Kim Porter came up today in testimony. What was the significance there?
The defense said early on that this case would be about infidelity, love, and jealousy. And this is where they brought that up today when they brought up Kim Porter's name. The defense asked Cassie Ventura, are you jealous or were you jealous of Kim Porter? And Ventura sort of contemplated, but did get to this moment where she said, knowing that Combs spent holidays with his family, which meant with Porter, did bother her. And she admitted that. They also pointed out that there was testimony where she talked about being insanely jealous overall as a girlfriend. So, yeah.
We're hearing the judge wants Cassie off the stand tomorrow. Will the prosecution and defense get equal time?
Yeah, as long as there aren't any additional motions, I think that is the goal, to have her off the stand by tomorrow.
Why do you think that? What's the reasoning behind wanting her off the stand tomorrow?
In the very beginning, Rachel, they told us that she would likely be on that stand 2 to 3 days. So here we are.
She says she was forced to participate in, of course, those freak-offs. The defense began establishing the love that Combs and Cassie had at the beginning of their relationship, how things really started, then escalated. They showed an exhibit of email exchanges that included messages from Combs that read, quote, "It makes me so happy that you would fly from Atlanta for me." And then Cassie replying, "I am a very lucky woman. I would fly wherever you needed me." And other exchanges that said, "Going to sleep now so it can be tomorrow faster." And then Combs replying, "I love my baby." Cassie saying on the stand that she got to see a private version of Combs that the public and even his own family didn't see, revealing she believed that Combs truly loved her. The defense also trying to establish there was nothing coercive about these freak-offs between the two that she has been describing for jurors these last few days. They've repeatedly described that Combs' sexual preferences as part of a swingers lifestyle, and that Cassie seemed eager, in fact, to participate in these freak-offs. Like another message that read, "I'm always ready to freak off." That's a quote. And another one that said, "When we used to freak off, when we were so in love, there was no question asked. It just felt right." And when asked why she agreed to the freak-off, she said, "I just wanted to make him happy." Cassie testifying that she would help get supplies for the freak-offs. She would call the drugs that she took vitamins. All of this to show she had an agency in this sexual activity.
You know, the man has no class. He has no kindness in his dark, dark heart. And he's depraved. That's my opinion. This is a depraved, disgusting individual about whom I wish to hear nothing after this trial is done. The question is he a criminal? You know, is he basically akin to a mob boss running several criminal enterprises? And while it's very clear to me he is a depraved, disgusting person, we have to prove that he violated the law. I actually think it's going to be pretty easy, but I can see what the defense is doing here, trying to say, all right, he has these, quote, freak-offs, you know, weird, kinky group sex in Hollywood. That's not an illegal thing. It happens all the time.
Cassie Ventura, where she revealed that after the relationship had ended with Sean Combs, there was an incident where he raped her. She talked about how later on she had PTSD flashbacks of her experience with him of the freak-offs. And at one point she came home and told her husband while their kids were sleeping that she just couldn't take it anymore and thought about walking into traffic.
If you don't have the consent of the women or the men, as the case may be, it is illegal. But okay, we're going to argue over whether they were willing participants. It's almost like a Harvey Weinstein situation where he's gonna say they willingly took drugs.
Another thing we learned about yesterday was her drug addiction. She said that she had an addiction to opiates, Errol.
They're gonna say absolutely not, he drugged me against my will. Maybe there were drugs in that baby oil, maybe in another way, but I definitely didn't consent to being drugged or to being raped or sodomized by P. Diddy.
And singer Dawn Richard from the girl group Danity Kane, she is likely on the famous people list because she's one of Diddy's many accusers.
Yeah.
Not in his criminal case, but she sued him civilly last year, claiming that she saw him abuse Cassie, his girlfriend, and that she herself was sexually assaulted, deprived of food, and cheated out of money that she was owed. Guess what? You're going to hear from her attorney in just a hot minute. But first, I want to bring in News Nation correspondent Caitlin Becker, who's outside the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Caitlin's been covering this case gavel to gavel. Okay, first of all, let's just start with the drip, drip, drip of all the names, because the internet is really on fire. What happened today?
You know, Ashley, a lot of the same things. You get asked these same exact questions about these celebrities with no real context as to why. And you really hit the nail on the head a minute ago when you said jury selection's kind of boring, but not in the Diddy case. Most prospective jurors who come into jury selection have never heard of the defendant, let alone have an opinion of them. But what we heard today was prospective jurors who were excluded because they flat out said they don't like Diddy going into it. They don't have a favorable opinion. One guy said he believed Diddy has enough money to buy his way out of jail. So those jurors immediately excluded. There was also some laughs in the courtroom today from the attorneys and the judge when one prospective juror said that he couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be able to smoke marijuana for all 8 to 10 weeks of the trial. So that person was excluded. But by the end of the day, they've added 10 more people to that pool of 45 that they're trying to get.
Imagine a music icon. Someone who has spent decades cultivating an image of perfection, suddenly losing control in a courtroom. For Sean Diddy Combs, that moment came faster than anyone could have anticipated. It wasn't just any outburst. It happened on the 4th day of his highly publicized trial, a case that has gripped headlines worldwide. The tension in the room was palpable as Cassie Ventura took the stand, revealing explosive and deeply personal details about their toxic relationship. But what truly sent shockwaves through the courtroom was the moment her legal team played a secret audio recording. In it, Diddy's voice could be heard threatening Cassie's life, making chilling promises to destroy her family and career if she ever dared to speak out. This wasn't just another celebrity scandal. It was something far darker and more consequential. It was a story of power wielded recklessly, systemic abuse hidden behind closed doors, and the unraveling of one of music's most celebrated legends. As the recording echoed through the room, the illusion of control that Diddy had so carefully maintained for decades began to crumble before everyone's eyes, leaving no doubt that this trial would redefine not only his legacy, but also how we view fame, accountability, and justice. The term freak-offs might sound like something from a wild party, but what Cassie described was far darker and more disturbing than anyone could have anticipated. On the surface, these events appeared to be typical celebrity gatherings, lavish parties held in upscale penthouses, luxurious mansions, or even private islands where the rich and famous mingled away from prying eyes. But beneath this glamorous facade lay something far more sinister. These weren't just spontaneous celebrations. They were meticulously planned setups designed not for enjoyment, but to trap Cassie in an inescapable nightmare. She recounted how the atmosphere would shift dramatically once most of the guests departed. What started as seemingly normal social events devolved into orchestrated encounters that left her feeling powerless and degraded. According to Cassie, Diddy was the mastermind behind it all. He allegedly brought in paid male sex workers, sometimes multiple at a time, and directed every aspect of what happened next. Cassie testified that he didn't merely observe these encounters, he controlled them with precision, giving explicit instructions about positions, acts, and even timing. In some instances, he joined in, while other times he filmed everything using his phone or professional camera equipment. The recordings weren't casual either. They became part of a growing collection that Diddy allegedly used as leverage over her, ensuring her compliance and silence. These videos, she claimed, became a prison, a constant reminder of what he could release into the public if she ever tried to leave him or speak out against him. What made these encounters even more horrifying was their frequency. Over the course of 5 years, Cassie estimated that these freak-offs occurred at least 30 times. They weren't rare or isolated incidents. They were a recurring pattern of abuse that wore down her sense of self-worth and autonomy. Many times, Cassie claimed she was too intoxicated or high to fully comprehend what was happening, let alone give meaningful consent. She alleged that Diddy often slipped drugs into her drinks without her knowledge, making her feel loose and disconnected from reality. This deliberate drugging rendered her unable to resist or escape, further solidifying his control over her body and mind. As jurors leaned forward in their seats, listening intently to every word, the full scope of these freak-offs began to crystallize. It became painfully clear that these weren't random debaucheries fueled by wealth and privilege. Instead, they were calculated tools of domination, methods of exerting power, maintaining leverage, and manipulating someone who had once trusted him. The emotional toll on Cassie was evident as she described feeling like she was no longer human, but rather an object owned and exploited by Diddy. For her, these experiences weren't consensual acts of intimacy or kink. They were violations that stripped away her dignity and left lasting scars. As the courtroom absorbed the gravity of her testimony, there was no denying that what initially seemed like wild indulgence was, in fact, a chilling system of abuse designed to keep her trapped in a cycle of fear and submission. But there's one night that stands out above all others, a night that would ultimately lead to this courtroom showdown. It was March 2018 in Miami, during what should have been a routine trip for Cassie. Diddy had arranged yet another freak-off session, this time with 2 men she didn't know and had never met before. These encounters were already a source of immense stress and trauma for her, but this particular night would take things to an entirely new level. Cassie, however, made a firm decision. She refused to participate. She explained on the stand that she was sober that evening because she had an early morning interview scheduled the next day. Knowing she needed to be clear-headed, she told Diddy no, something she rarely did given the power dynamics in their relationship. At first, Diddy laughed it off, as if he thought she couldn't possibly be serious. His initial reaction seemed almost casual, dismissive even, like he assumed she'd eventually cave under pressure as she had so many times before. But when it became clear that Cassie wasn't going to change her mind, his demeanor shifted dramatically. The playful smirk vanished from his face, replaced by something darker, anger and entitlement. Later that night, around 3 a.m., Cassie heard loud, aggressive pounding on her hotel room door. Her heart raced as she approached it cautiously. Security footage from the hotel hallway later confirmed what she already knew. It was Diddy outside her room, visibly drunk and furious. Witnesses described him as unsteady on his feet, his tie loose, his expensive suit disheveled. When Cassie opened the door to tell him to leave, he didn't wait for an invitation. He pushed his way inside, his presence filling the small space with tension and fear. What followed was nothing short of horrifying. Cassie testified in chilling detail how Diddy grabbed her forcefully, throwing her onto the bed without hesitation. She recounted how he ripped at her clothes, ignoring her cries for him to stop. "Please stop," she begged repeatedly, tears streaming down her face. But he showed no mercy. Instead, he allegedly sexually assaulted her, disregarding her pleas and inflicting both physical and emotional pain. The courtroom fell silent as Cassie described the events of that night. Jurors listened intently, some leaning forward in their seats, others looking away, unable to process the gravity of what they were hearing. 2 jurors visibly flinched when photos of Cassie's injuries were shown to the court. The images were graphic and undeniable, bruising on her wrists, thighs, and neck, consistent with someone who had been violently restrained. A male juror asked for a short break after viewing them, which the judge granted. Cassie also revealed that she sought medical attention the following morning at an urgent care clinic in Miami. Medical records dated March 9th, 2018, documented the extent of her injuries, further corroborating her testimony. Despite the evidence staring them in the face, Cassie admitted she lied to the doctor about how the injuries occurred. "I told them I fell during a dance rehearsal," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I was too ashamed and scared to tell the truth. I knew no one would believe me over him." She went on to explain how she hid the bruises from friends and family, using makeup and long-sleeved clothing to cover up what had happened. A former assistant later testified that she helped Cassie conceal similar injuries multiple times throughout their relationship, underscoring just how often these incidents occurred. This night wasn't just another disturbing chapter in their toxic relationship. It was the moment Cassie realized the depth of Diddy's control over her life and the lengths he was willing to go to maintain it. For years, she carried the weight of that trauma silently, afraid of the consequences if she spoke out. Now, sitting in that courtroom, recounting every painful detail, she finally found the courage to expose the truth. And as the jury absorbed her words, it became clear that this testimony could be the turning point in the entire case. Fast forward to today, and we're witnessing the aftermath of those events unfold right before our eyes. During Cassie's testimony, something snapped in Diddy. Witnesses described how his calm exterior shattered in seconds. One minute, he looked composed, almost bored. The next, his face twisted with rage, and his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. Then came the moment nobody saw coming. Cassie's lawyer stood up and said, "Your Honor, we'd like to play Exhibit 47. Nobody knew what was coming, except maybe Diddy. A secret recording of a phone call from 2018 began playing. In it, Diddy threatened Cassie, saying if she ever spoke out, he'd destroy her family and career. His voice echoed through the courtroom, leaving everyone stunned. That's when Diddy lost it. He jumped up, shouting, "That's a lie." His chair crashed backward, and security moved in as the judge slammed his gavel repeatedly, demanding order. It was chaos, but also confirmation of everything Cassie had been saying. This wasn't just any piece of evidence. It was the smoking gun, the kind of revelation that shifts the entire foundation of a trial. Legal experts agree that recordings like this can make or break a case. In this instance, it obliterated Diddy's defense strategy, leaving his legal team scrambling to recover. Up until that point, his lawyers had worked tirelessly to paint Cassie's story as a fabrication, a desperate attempt to extort money from a billionaire who had spent decades cultivating an image of invincibility. But now, with Diddy's own words echoing through the courtroom, those claims began to crumble under the weight of undeniable reality. The recording revealed not only his explicit threats, but also his deeply ingrained belief that his wealth and influence made him untouchable, almost godlike in his ability to control others. Jurors heard firsthand how he thought he could silence anyone who dared challenge him, using his power as both a shield and a weapon. One juror broke her pencil tip, writing furiously during the outburst, her notes spilling across the page in an effort to capture every detail of the chaos unfolding before her. Another wiped tears from her eyes, visibly shaken by the raw emotion and intensity of the moment. Even seasoned reporters, hardened by years of covering high-profile cases, looked away, unable to process the gravity of what they were witnessing. For many in the room, it was a visceral reminder of the human cost behind the headlines. As one legal analyst put it, when someone explodes like that in front of a jury, it makes the accusations against them seem much more believable. The outburst wasn't just a loss of composure. It was a crack in the carefully constructed facade Diddy had maintained for decades. It exposed the raw, unfiltered truth beneath, a man who believed he was above accountability, now forced to confront the possibility that his empire might come crashing down around him. Of course, the defense isn't going down without a fight. Throughout the trial, they've worked tirelessly to paint Cassie as a willing participant in these events, carefully constructing a narrative that portrays her as an enthusiastic partner rather than a victim. They've presented emails and text messages showing her excitement about their relationship early on, highlighting exchanges where Cassie expressed deep affection and eagerness to be with Diddy. In one notable exchange, Cassie wrote, "I love you. "I'm so excited to be a part of this relationship with you," emphasizing her apparent enthusiasm at the time. Defense attorneys argue that these messages prove she wanted to please Diddy, even going so far as to agree to participate in the infamous freak-offs willingly. To further bolster their case, the defense has attempted to reframe the alleged abuse as consensual kinky behavior, suggesting it was part of a swinger's lifestyle that both parties had embraced. They've pointed to specific text messages where Cassie allegedly referred to herself as always ready to freak off and described these encounters as something that just felt right when they were in love. By doing so, they aim to cast doubt on her claims of coercion and force, implying instead that this was a mutual exploration of sexual preferences within their relationship. However, Cassie maintains that while she may have appeared eager, it was all an act, a calculated effort to keep Diddy happy and maintain some semblance of control in a deeply unequal dynamic. She testified, "I just wanted to make him happy," revealing the psychological toll of feeling trapped in a relationship where she believed compliance was her only option. Her lawyers argue that what seemed like consent was, in reality, coercion masked as love, driven by fear, manipulation, and the overwhelming power imbalance between them. The question remains, was this truly mutual exploration, or coercion masked as love? The defense's strategy hinges on convincing the jury that Cassie's participation was voluntary, but her emotional testimony paints a starkly different picture. She described how Diddy allegedly used threats, drugs, and even recordings of their encounters to ensure her silence and compliance, creating an environment where saying no wasn't just difficult, it was impossible. As the trial progresses, jurors are left grappling with conflicting narratives. Was Cassie a willing participant in a complex relationship, or was she a victim of systematic abuse disguised as romance? This central tension continues to shape the trajectory of the case, leaving everyone watching to wonder which version of the truth will prevail. Beyond the legal battle lies a deeply personal story of trauma and survival, one that has left invisible scars on Cassie Ventura's life. She revealed how even after leaving Diddy, she continued to struggle with PTSD flashbacks triggered by memories of their time together. These weren't fleeting moments of sadness, but persistent reminders of the abuse she endured. Cassie admitted to having suicidal thoughts during particularly dark periods, recounting an incident where she told her husband she couldn't take it anymore and considered walking into traffic just to escape the overwhelming pain. Her emotional scars are undeniable, etched into every aspect of her daily existence. Friends close to her say she often feels like she's reliving those traumatic nights, unable to fully shake off the fear and humiliation. Her family, too, has borne witness to the profound pain she endured, watching helplessly as someone they love wrestled with the aftermath of a toxic relationship. Her mother, in particular, described sitting through the trial as reliving my worst nightmare, knowing there was nothing she could have done to protect her daughter at the time. Meanwhile, Diddy's once untouchable public image continues to crumble under the weight of these allegations. Once celebrated as a visionary entrepreneur, philanthropist, and cultural icon, he's now facing accusations so severe they could redefine his legacy forever. The man who meticulously crafted his brand for decades, controlling everything from his music releases to his red carpet appearances, is now exposed in ways no PR team can fix. Legal experts suggest that this case isn't just about financial settlements or tabloid headlines. It's about accountability, power dynamics, and whether someone of Diddy's stature can truly face consequences for alleged misconduct. As one courtroom observer noted, for a man who spent decades controlling his image down to the smallest detail, this is his worst nightmare come true. What makes this unraveling even more poignant is the stark contrast between who he portrayed himself to be publicly and the person now emerging in court documents and testimonies. Fans who once idolized him are grappling with the possibility that the man behind the glitz and glamour may have harbored darker secrets all along. This duality has sparked intense debates about celebrity culture, trust, and the dangers of unchecked influence. For both Cassie and Diddy, the stakes couldn't be higher, her fight for justice versus his desperate attempt to salvage what remains of his empire. So, where does this leave us? With Cassie's powerful testimony, the damning audio recording, and Diddy's courtroom meltdown, the trajectory of this case has shifted dramatically. Legal experts predict not just a massive financial settlement, but potential criminal charges as well. We're watching a man realize in real time that his money and power might not save him this time. As the trial continues, one thing is certain. This isn't just about Diddy and Cassie. It's about accountability, justice, and whether true consequences exist for those who think they're above the law. And as viewers, we're left asking ourselves, can true justice ever be served?